Hello and welcome back to Bookish and welcome back to Tag Tuesday. This week I want to do a tag that's long overdue. My buddy Alan over at Big Hard Books and Classics tagged me to do the I'm Mental book tag. I apologize to Alan for taking me so long to do it. I'll leave a link to his original down below. This tag only has 4 questions, but really Alan made this tag to kind of as a way of kind of increasing awareness or getting us to think about mental illness. Probably everybody in the world who's watching this video, their life has in some way been touched by mental illness. And I think that, for me, my own ideas about mental illness have evolved over the course of my life, and so that now I'm much more accepting of the idea that mental illness is, in fact, illness. It's treatable, it's diagnosable, and it's something we need to take seriously. I think too oftentimes we discount maybe it's just people from my generation have a tendency to discount people's psychological pain and not take it as seriously as we should, and we definitely should. So the question only has 4 prompts, and so I'll talk about those as we go. Prompt number 1: has someone ever dared you to read a book? I didn't have an answer to this till I watched Hannah from Hannah's Books video, in which she dared me to read the Iliad. The Iliad was one of those books, classics I said I refused to read, and I was never going to read, and so she dared me to read this. I don't think, Hannah and I know one another through BookTube, but one thing she doesn't know about me is I think how stubborn I actually am, and how daring me to do something is actually a way to get me not to do it. At various points in time, people have tried to apply pressure to get me to do things which might have been good for me, might not have been good for me, and I have still refused to do those things. Anyway, Hannah did dare me to read the Iliad, and right now, Hannah, I'm sorry to say, I still refuse to read the Iliad, but maybe one day. Question number 2 is really one of my favorites that Alan has on here, and that is, who is a writer who's taken a lot of crap? And I'm going to go with F. Scott Fitzgerald. I realize that this may seem strange, since Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby is regularly rated, by critics, I guess, or people are supposed to know as one of the great novels in American history. But Fitzgerald himself, I think, has come in for a fair amount of criticism, some valid and some perhaps over the top. There's no doubt that Fitzgerald's relationship with his wife Zelda was an intensely unhealthy one. I know that many people believe that Fitzgerald stole Zelda's ideas and included them in his work. There is some evidence for that, that Scott worked to prevent Zelda's book from being published. That kind of goes back and forth. I would say that for the most part, is not true. That Zelda was confined to a mental institution, and Scott had affairs and relationships while paying for her placement in that mental institution in South Carolina, and that she died in a fire at that mental institution is also true. So F. Scott Fitzgerald, I think, takes a fair amount of crap, and I'll get back to more about Fitzgerald here with the last question, but that would be my author who I think takes a lot of crap. Prompt number 3, do you think you can predict the future? I don't think I can predict the future, but I do believe in jinxes, which is in a sense a belief that something I do might affect the future, and therefore I guess it's a way of saying, if I don't do this thing, if I don't say this thing, then the future will work out in a certain way. So this is actually pretty bad with me, so much so that I have a way in which I've developed a negative jinx, in which I say the thing I don't want to happen on the assumption that if I say the thing I don't want to happen, then what I do want to happen will actually work out. So I'm not sure if that counts, but that feels a little bit like me believing I can predict the future. I'm not obsessive about these things. It has mainly to do with sports things and not just everyday life, but I do think I believe in the jinx. So if you're ever throwing a no-hitter in Major League Baseball or baseball anywhere else, I won't mention the no-hitter, and I won't talk to you while you're throwing the no-hitter, because that's a jinx. And I get angry at the sportscasters on TV who jinx baseball players who do that. By the way, if you know anything about me in sports, my favorite English Premier League team is Tottenham Hotspur, and I frequently sound really doom and gloomy when I talk about them, and this is an attempt by me to create a reverse jinx, that if I say that there's no way they're going to make the Champions League this year, then I'm actually attempting to create a reverse jinx, which means they will, but of course they won't, because Tottenham is the most disappointing team to be a fan of. And the last question on the list is a favorite book you don't want to admit. Now, to be honest with you, there's no book that I've read that I would consider to be a favorite that I don't want to admit, but I will admit that here lately, saying that I really love The Great Gatsby seems to put me out of step with lots of people and lots of commenters and lots of people's opinions. But I really love The Great Gatsby. I think it is oftentimes a beautifully written book. It definitely seems mannered, particularly the way in which the characters talk, because it is set, definitely during the 1920s, the slang and the ideas of that time period. But I still think it's beautifully written, and to prove it, I'm going to read the last page of The Great Gatsby to you. By the way, this is not a spoiler. So here we go. Most of the big shore places were closed now, and there were hardly any lights except the shadowy, moving glow of a ferry boat across the Sound. And as the moon rose higher, the inessential houses began to melt away until gradually I became aware of the old island here that flowered once for Dutch sailors' eyes, a fresh, green breast of the New World. Its vanished trees, the trees that had made way for Gatsby's house, had once pandered in whispers to the last and greatest of all human dreams. For a transitory, enchanted moment, man must have held his breath in the presence of this continent, compelled into an aesthetic contemplation he neither understood nor desired, face to face for the last time in history with something commiserate with his capacity for wonder. And as I stood there brooding on the old, unknown world, I thought of Gatsby's wonder when he first picked out the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. He had come a long way to this blue lawn, and his dream must have seemed so close that he could hardly fail to grasp it. He did not know that it was already behind him, somewhere in that vast obscurity beyond the city, where the dark fields of the Republic rolled on under the night. Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgiastic future that year by year recedes before us. It eluded us then, but that's no matter. Tomorrow we will run faster, stretch out our arms farther, and one fine morning. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. That's just beautiful writing, and you may hate the story, you may hate F. Scott Fitzgerald, but it is a beautifully written book, and it is a book that I will no longer hesitate to say that I love. Anyway, thanks to Alan for tagging me. I'm not going to tag anybody specifically, but I will say this is a really fun tag, which, asks a lot of pretty original questions, and Alan should be giving great credit for that. And it's one you can do quickly, and you don't have to pull a lot of books off your shelves to do it. So let me encourage you to do this tag and to answer these questions, and perhaps to say something about that raises awareness of mental illness. Anyway, thanks to Alan for tagging me. Thanks to Hannah for daring me. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching.